Crazy. This is wild. So I was doing that whole thing and I realized that I didn't plug in my microphone. These are the joys of live streaming. So I forgot to plug in my microphone. So you know what I'm gonna do? That whole thing that I did before, all of the questions and everything that I did, nobody heard anything because my microphone wasn't on. This is awesome. All right, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go from the top, and hopefully I'll remember everything that I said. But I'm gonna go from the top, and I'm gonna do it again. Thank you, Aaron. You're a champ. You're the real MVP. Thank you. So let's rewind and let's do this again. Thank you for joining everyone to this live stream. If you're watching this live, thank you, and if you're tuning in after the fact, I'm grateful that you are watching, and I hope you learned something because I'm going to be talking about creating an AI podcast from start to finish. I'm still getting used to all of these live streaming stuff, so bear with me, please, because yeah, for those who I'm going to probably edit this afterwards and cut off the beginning part, or maybe I should just leave it. But I forgot to turn on my microphone, so now it's on. So let's do this whole thing again. So I'm going to be talking about creating a podcast completely using AI from start to finish. Now, by the end of the live stream, hopefully I'll give you a little bit of encouragement of how you can do it for yourself and some of the tools that I use to create my podcast. Now, I have multiple podcasts that I actually do myself. I made a podcast and Faith Fight podcast. I have one that I do with my church called It's Your Destiny podcast. And that is actually me speaking with audio and video. But I do have a podcast called Dirty Numbers. It's a podcast about true stories about fraud, scams, and financial crimes and heist. I love those types of stories. I love heist movies like Ocean's 11 and stuff like that. I love it. So I was thinking to myself, man, I would love to create a podcast and enter the true crimes category and create something about financial crimes. And I realized that I don't have the time. So I was like, hey, let's use AI to do it from start to finish. So that is where I had the idea of starting this podcast called Dirty Numbers. Now, I'll put a link so that you guys can listen to it in the, maybe I'll do that after. It'll be in the description of this video. So you can go down there afterwards and you'll be able to listen to the podcast itself, the one that I created completely using AI from start to finish. But let me answer some of these questions that some people submitted because I did say I was going to be talking about this. Some people submitted some questions. So let me answer these questions. So the first question, and I did this before when my microphone wasn't working, but let me do it again. So first one is, can listeners tell that your podcast is AI generated? Okay, so I can tell that it's AI generated, but I think there are a lot of people who listen to the podcast and if they listen closely, they can tell that the podcast is AI generated. But it's coming to the point right now where AI technology, when it comes to creating voices, from text to speech voices, it is getting so clear and so good that you might actually fool some people. Now, what I do, and most people who do have a podcast or they use AI in any type of content creation, they put a little disclaimer somewhere in the description or somewhere on the podcast where they say this podcast is created with AI or this video or whatever is created with AI, just for full transparency's sake. And that's important because there are some platforms that require you to disclose whether or not the platform is using, whether or not your content is using AI or not. Okay, so that's very important if you are planning to use, AI to create your podcast. So yes, people, if you listen closely to my podcast, you can tell that it is AI driven. But the technology is getting really good where it is actually, you might actually fool people if you don't disclose that it is AI, an AI podcast. Now, the next question was, what parts of your podcast does AI actually handle? Everything, from start to finish, even from the generation of the artwork of my podcast. I use Chat GPT to create the image, to write the script, to do the text to speech, to edit it. Everything is all done with AI. So I do very little work. I do listen to it to make sure that there are no mistakes in the text to uh, speech translation, or whatever you call that, generation, because sometimes I find that AI does make some mistakes when it comes to uh, taking the text and saying a word, right? So I might need to spell the word differently for it to say it the right way, type of thing. Because English is a hard language to speak and to learn. I feel sorry for people who come to Canada or come to an English speaking country and they're learning the language, because it is difficult to learn English. So the AI tools, those text to speech AI tools, they are having some challenges when it comes to that. And I do listen to it, and I manually go in and make some updates from that perspective. But to answer that question directly, every part of my podcast is done using AI, because again, I don't have time to be writing the script myself, to recording the audio myself, and if I make a mistake, then I need to edit it, and all those stuff. I don't have time to do that because I have multiple podcasts, full-time job, I have a family, I have responsibilities at my church, everything, so I don't have any more free time to put towards podcasting. Now, someone also asks, is AI in podcasting considered cheating? Depends on who you ask, okay? Because I don't consider it cheating. I consider it using the tools that are available to you. Now, podcasting, I think as I mentioned before, you should put a disclaimer somewhere so that so that people know that the podcast is AI generated. Okay, so that's actually really important for you to mention that somewhere. And also look at the terms and conditions of whichever platform you're submitting your content to. You want to make sure that you are reading the terms and conditions to make sure you're not violating any of them with your AI content that for this podcast, right? And can AI podcasts actually make money? The answer is yes, I think. Again, we need to look at the terms and conditions that the platforms have when you upload, whichever platform that you use to upload the content. You have to look at the terms and conditions to make sure that you're not violating any of the terms and conditions by using AI to create your content. Okay, so that's very important, that you read those terms and conditions. But absolutely, if the opportunity comes for me to make money using AI and my podcast, I'm going to absolutely take advantage of it. And again, I'm going to read the terms and conditions to make sure that I'm not violating any of them by creating AI driven or AI generated content. But if the opportunity does come for me to make money using my AI podcast, absolutely, I'm going to take advantage of that and make some money off of it. Now, let me get into those were the questions that I got, but I want to get into how I use AI to create the Dirty Numbers podcast. And I'm going to go through the entire process for you so you can see exactly how I use AI to create the podcast. So first of all, I use ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT, I use that tool more so now like a information gathering tool where you can be very specific, not specific in what you ask it, and then it will give you back, it will search the internet and give you back all of the information that that you're asking it for, right? So I will ask ChatGPT, search the internet in the past 6 months and give me all of the stories that made international headlines that are surrounded financial crimes, scams, or heist that would make a good story, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever the question is, I would be specific and ask ChatGPT, and it will return me all of these stories. And I will say, okay, this is a great story. Can you send me all of the links for this story? Like, for example, back in October, there was the heist of the jewels from the Louvre Museum in Paris. That was a story that was really popular. It made for a great story of to hear how they, pulled off the heist, what investigators were able to find out, if they arrested anybody, the investigation, what the police are doing, right? It was a great story. So I used Chat GPT and I said, get me all of the links and the stories for the Louvre heist that I can use for source information for my podcast script, and it will give me back all of the links that I need. The next step is I take those links and I would put them into Claude. Now, the reason why I don't use ChatGPT and I use Claude is because I find Claude is better when it comes to writing, when it comes to writing things for speech, whether there's a script or a description, a blog post. When it comes to speech, Claude is better at formulating sentences and paragraphs so that it flows more naturally like a person would speak. So what I would do, and I have a prompt that does this, is I take that all of the links and the source information that ChatGPT gave me, I would take it and put it into Claude, and I would ask Claude to act as a investigative journalist reporter with more than 20 years of experience. And I would ask it to write a podcast script based on all of the information that I've given them, and also search the information to fill in any gaps that may be missed that I presented, right? So that you can write a 30-minute podcast script. And I would say, make sure that you include chapters and titles, and give me a title for the episode, and write a description, and put strong hooks at the beginning of every single section, and write it in a suspenseful way so that people will be able to listen to it and hang off of every word as they're listening to it, etc., etc., so that we could keep people listening through the entire episode. And it will actually go away and write the script in a way that is engaging, suspenseful, and informative, and tell you what has been going on, different perspective, what experts are saying, and it will put it all into this podcast script. And I love the way that Claude does it. So if you are using AI to create your podcast or a script, try using Claude, because I feel like it does such a better job at creating scripts. Anything that involves speaking, Claude does a better job than ChatGPT, in my opinion. All right, so try it out. The next thing that I do is I will take the script that it gives me. It usually outputs a Word document, and I will take that script and I will upload it into CapCut. Now, CapCut is they have a text to speech tool in the pro version of CapCut. And what I do is I just copy it, and then I paste it into CapCut, and I select the voice. And I also, select the voice, and I just click the button that says generate. And then I walk away and I let it do its thing. It takes about 5 minutes. And then it creates the voice reading the script that I just took out of Claude and put into CapCut. So it reads that entire script in the voice that I selected, and I have it as a MP3. And it's right there. All right. And what I do is then I add the music. So I used CapCut, and I said, create some suspenseful music for the podcast. And right now I only have one, set or one song or one piece of music that I just loop over and over for every single episode, and it kind of sets the atmosphere type of thing, playing quietly in the background. But that was generated using the AI tool in CapCut as well. I just said, create some suspenseful music that is soft that I could play in the background of this episode, and it did. It just created it, and I just loop it over and over and over throughout the entire episode. And before I move any further, let me just go back to the script for a second. Now, what I found in in CapCut, when it does that text to speech generation, some words it messes up some words. So I listened to it once over, and I might need to manually change some things, but you could do that easily. Maybe take a sentence that it may have messed up a word or a couple words, and then type it phonetically how the word sounds instead of how it's spelled, so that the text to speech AI can say it the right way. Like, for example, I did the Kit Kat. I did an episode on the Kit Kat heist that happened at the end of March, and the word Kit Kat, it was it was saying it was saying something different instead of saying Kit Kat. Um, oh, it was saying Kit Kit or something like that, instead of Kit Kat. So because of the K in cat, so I had to change that to actual C, so it would say Kit Kat, right? And it actually, so I actually have to go in and do that in every part of the script in order for it to say it the right way in that episode. But that was a really great episode. I learned a lot about the heist and about financial crimes and how the Kit Kat heist is related to Formula One. I would encourage you to go listen to that episode. So, anyways, get back to this live stream. So, what I do next is I listen through it manually. I would just go in and adjust all the volume levels. Once that everything is set and it sounds good to my ears, where the music doesn't overpower the voice, I would just export it, and then I'm done. I have my podcast MP3 format from start to finish. Has the intro, has the script, introducing every single chapter, and has an outro. Thanks for listening to this podcast. It was produced by Podcast Production Labs. Subscribe for more. That's it. Export it, and then I move over to Substack. Now, this was more so like an experiment for me because I have used Libsyn for my podcast hosting. I have used Spotify for creators, but I have never used Substack. And I heard about it, that they have a podcasting feature. And I said, let me use it, right? So Substack is more so for people who are writers, blog posts. But one of the things that's important about blog posts is the SEO portion of it, right? So you can write a blog post for your podcast and host it on Substack, and the keywords that you use in the blog post will actually help it to get traction and get people to listen to it. And that's what I was doing my experiment on with Substack. So what I do is I would take that podcast and host it on Substack just to see how much traction I can get and how much listens I can get. I did very minimal promotion. I don't share. I shared a few social clips on social media, like on LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, Instagram. A very few. I don't share much about it. I would just send out one link, say, hey, I got a new episode, and I would send the Substack link because I wanted to see if people were actually finding it organically. So some episodes I didn't even promote at all. But I started this podcast, the Dirty Numbers podcast, on the first episode was released on April 6th, and today is May 13th. So about a month and a half. And I have I got the trailer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes that have been published. And I'm going to do 10 episodes in this season and then evaluate the results. But I have 8 episodes that have been released so far. Out of those 8 episodes in the past 6 weeks, total downloads, I have just under 400 downloads, minimum promotion, 400, almost 400 downloads in that time frame. Now, whether that's good or bad, I don't know yet. I'm going to go in and then do some research at the end of season 1. But one of the things that I wanted to find out is if Substack a better location to host your podcast, because you have the ability to post it as a blog post where you get more benefits when it comes to SEO. And people on the Substack platform who like to read and also like podcasts, they can read the article, the blog post, and also listen to the podcast, right? So what I actually do using AI, I create a blog post about the episode and I publish it on Substack with the link to the audio podcast so people can listen to it as well. All right. And that is how I use AI for my podcast. That's how I use Substack to host the podcast and share it. And I hope that this encouraged you guys out there. So if you are thinking about starting a podcast, this is how I do it. So if I had to give the total amount of hours that I spent on every single episode, I would say less than 1 hour, because I listen to every single episode, and I might need to um, go into make edits and all of the copying from one platform to the next, and to take it from here and uploading into different platforms. I want to say maybe an hour every single episode to produce this AI driven podcast. All right. So if you use AI to create your podcast, let me know what you do differently on your podcast. Share your insights with me. I would love to know, love to find out. And also, if you want to reach out to me to find out, to work with me with regards to any of the podcasts and stuff, if you have a podcast idea, please reach out to me. Let me know. Tomorrow on I Made a Podcast, I have a really, really powerful episode that's coming out. It's about my podcast readiness assessment, and I've been talking about it for a little bit, but I give a complete walkthrough on how it works and how you can use it to make sure that you're ready to release your podcast. That episode is coming out tomorrow, so please subscribe here so that you can get it. But subscribe on, and also subscribe on all of the podcasts and apps so that you can listen to that episode, and you can use the podcast readiness assessment tool to plug in. It's a multiple choice assessment, and you can plug in your answers based on your podcast idea, and then it will give you feedback whether or not your idea is ready to go and launch, or if you need to do a little bit more work. And then it also gives you the recommendations of what you need to do to move forward with your podcast. All right. And that episode is tomorrow. I'm going to do a walkthrough, but you could take the assessment at any time. There's a link. I'll put a link down below this so that you can do that. But that's it for this live stream. Again, I'm going to do this bi-weekly so that you can get a sense of how life is behind the scenes, behind the podcast, so that you can learn some of the things that I am doing to manage life and to do everything that I do, and still have multiple podcasts, multiple projects, multiple things on the go, and not lose my mind, because I'm actually enjoying every single aspect of it, and I'm not burning out because I have very good processes in the back end in how I do everything. All right. So remember, the best time to start a podcast was 10 years ago, and the second best time is right now. And you can use AI to do it, which is what I did in this episode. Okay. Or in this live stream. So in 2 weeks, I'll do another live stream, and I probably will touch on some of the tools that I use, the physical tools, like in my studio, what I use. So make sure you tune in and go and make your podcast dreams come true. All right. Peace. This was really fun. Thanks for joining, everybody.